Welcome once again to The Sage. Thank you for joining us. And I'm not surprised you joined us because last week we had an amazing discussion. We began this wonderful journey of embarking on growing our own chickens ourselves in our homes, for our families, for our meal times, or our table. Welcome again. If you remember last week, we started discussing what type of chicken. Having decided to do it, to take your food, or at least part of it, into your own hands, the first thing our experts told us was the need to choose the type of chicken. But because, let's turn to them again. I remind you who they are. We have John Tokula. John, welcome once again to the set. We have Richard Abegunde. Welcome to the set. And we have Opalaye Olakunle.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome again to the
Thank you,
set.
ma'am. Thank you.
So thank you for being with us. Thank you for the very important information you provided last week. So there it was. The bottom line was that to recognize that there are different types of chickens to choose to rear.
Yes, ma'am.
You can start with day-old chicks, or you can start with what they call the brooded chicks, which are 2 weeks, that are usually about 2 weeks old and have had the expert care required at that time. You can decide whether your chickens, you want them primarily for laying eggs, or whether it's for the meat on the table. And therefore, that will guide the type of chicken, whether it's a broiler, or whether it's a layer you want, or whether it's the mixed one. They again told us about the fact that depending on what you choose, the time for harvesting, so to say, varies. If it's the egg, the chicken that will lay egg, that whether it's the mixed or just the layer, you're going to wait patiently for 16 weeks, right? Correct me, guys,
Yes,
if
you're
I'm
right,
summarizing
ma'am.
you wrongly, before you begin to enjoy the fruits of your harvest. But if it's the broiler that you chose, then perhaps in 5-6 weeks or so, you can begin to harvest for your table. All of it have cost implications, all of it have care implications. And so then you explore, find out, depending on what you want, what is the market price, and make a budget, trying to estimate what will cost you to invest and go forward. Having done all that work, and then you decide to embark on it, I turn to my experts and now say, so what do they do before venturing off to the market? What do they do to prepare their home, their compound, to receive their new farm?
Okay, thank you. Well, since you've decided you are going for, as a family, you want to rear poultry birds, so either you are going for meat or you are going for egg. So there are some things you have to put in consideration. How am I going to house them? And then when we are talking about house preparation of fowls, so two major things that housing is involved. We have the semi-intensive, then we have the intensive. So the intensive is where you monitor them properly, and then the semi-intensive is just like you monitor them properly, attend to them very well, but not too cordial, because they've already grown.
You're talking intensive, you're talking about their kind of accommodation.
So
whether it's a 5-star hotel or a 1-star.
No, like
what is intensive?
What I'm trying to say in a nutshell, when you're going for housing, so you have to consider, okay, which type of housing materials, that I want to go for. Okay, the housing system that I want to go for. And after being considering your environment where you are, perhaps you live in a place that is fenced, and you have a open compound, and then, okay, how can I start what can I do to make my housing better? So we have different form of materials that you can use for your housing of of your beds. So we have the housing of metal housing. Then you have a housing that you can build with wood. Also, you have to consider that also. And then the site where you have to place your cage. When I'm talking about housing, I mean in form of a cage also. So where you are going to place your cage, because you have to place them where there will be enough of sunlight, like not hot sun, but ventilations, so where they receive fresh air. And you have to make sure that that place is waterlogged too, doesn't retain waters where you are siting your cage for your fowl.
I thought usually your cage will be off the ground.
Yes, that's why it's off the ground. Water shouldn't that place have to be drained. It have to the drainage have to be there, proper drainage, because water harbors different kinds of insects, different kind of diseases.
That is their own environmental hazard, eh?
Yes, that's one of the environmental hazards you have to consider. And yet, in siting a cage, like you said earlier, you have to raise it above the floor level, like 1 coach or like 9 inches above the ground level before you put a base. So, and then another thing you have to consider in housing, the bedding materials. What I mean by the bedding materials is that you cannot just put your fowl under a plain wood like that, because
you mean the floor of the cage?
The floor of the cage, you can't just put them on that, because you have to be cleaning them routinely, like constantly cleaning their housing. So that's part of the bedding materials. We have the wood shavings, we have the sawdust, then we have we can use paper too, and then you can use sack, where you first put at the floor level, at the base, before putting your fowl inside the cage. Then you have to consider also the drinking materials and the feeding materials for your fowl when it comes to preparation for the building and the housing of your chickens. So those are the part of the things you have to consider when it comes to housing.
So when it comes to housing, there is more to it. So now you've brought the bed in, you've created the place for them, the cage is already set. So about the bedding now, so you've already put the sawdust or the wood shaving inside. So you mentioned sack. So the sack is, I will advise that maybe if you're having like 2 tiers in the cage, probably just a single tier, there's no need for sack. You can just put your sawdust on it like that, because the sack can hold water and the place will be wet. So that's it. That's why I would not really advise the sack. But if you're having like a tier in the cage, maybe there are 2 steps in the cage, so you can use sack just to reduce, like to prevent water from dropping to the one on the lower level. But
so let me interrupt you. I think what we need to do, because I'm so happy I'm a novice at this, because then I am representing our audience watching you guys, because sometimes professionals talk as if they think you know. One thing that's come out to me from listening to both of you, first of all, before you go home, go to the market and buy that bird, you have to construct a house, a cage of some sort. We also need guidance on, for instance, if I've gone to buy 50 chickens, what size cage am I constructing? Is there something that guides us, And what are the types of cages out there? Is a cage something you can go buy in the market, or are there specifications? I'm trying to help my audience then understand, how do they get guidance to construct the right type of cage? To my simple mind, the number of birds should play a part in that. If I'm only doing 10 birds, then what are the cage specifications I need? If I'm doing 50, what? Is there any guidance?
To that, you see, there's the most popular cage being used, and the most popular cage being used is something called the battery cage. Battery cage. I think so. The cage is a form of metal. If you go, it's one of the most popular that you see most of these poultry farms have. These big poultry farms have. It's a form of metal. You can see it's transparent. So where they bring their neck out to eat, there's a fan, there's this thing in front of it for them to eat. So now you don't need to bring them out. They are there 247. So when they are excreta, their waste. So when their waste comes down, there's like a panel on it. This thing. So it's a tray, right? Okay, tray. So usually some modernized farms, at the end of the day, they'll just be rolling it. So it's a long tray like this. They'll be rolling it so it comes out to this part. So that's how they clean it every day. That's the most popular and the most used by big farms. The other part that
But by big farms, how affordable is this? How can families adapt this? Because now we're talking, assuming that the people we're talking to this time are not necessarily big farms,
okay.
but are growing birds for their table. So
what I would advise them is that I don't advise them to go for battery cages, since they are doing mainly for the family. If you even have, I was talking to my friends, if you even have a room in your house that is well ventilated, that is not used for anything, you can still afford them there. And
you will put the cage in the room?
No, like
just in the room?
In the room. A room that you're not using that is well ventilated. Put their sawdust, light them, keep them light, and they're good to go. You don't need to build a lot of this. And when there's something about poultry beds, the more space they have to move, the more their legs are stronger. So if you keep them, if you choke them up in a
that's what the Oyinbos call free range.
Yes, free range. Yes, that's true. So if you put them in a particular spot, they don't have free movement to move. You see them when they grow big. You see them; they cannot stand, so they are only sitting because their legs cannot carry their body. So what I would advise small scale farmers, if you want to start and you have a room, not necessarily, it can be an outdoor room, not necessarily, not even inside your house, like an outdoor room where you can enter.
Perhaps a big U that is not being used,
beautiful,
or something like that.
Yes, not being used. Put them when it's nighttime. When it's nighttime, you move. If they are cold, you on your lights. If they are not cold, you raise the curtains for them and give them ventilation. There's something about these birds. One thing that mostly kill them is heat. When they are not properly ventilated, they produce, their feathers are very thick, so they produce a lot of heat from themselves, and then clambering up together, all of them gathering their heat together, so it affects them. So they need ventilation. So if you have a space that is well ventilated, and they probably feed them properly, and you give them good water, and their water is not affected, they are good to go.
What about just letting them roam in my compound?
And there's an advantage and there's a disadvantage. They may roll in the compound and they will roll into your neighbor's compound, and your neighbor will not agree that it's all.
Yeah, we're solving hunger problems.
So another thing is that you cannot control their waste. You cannot control their waste. So everywhere you go around your compound is littered. So that's the disadvantage, especially. Let me use broilers for instance. I believe those birds came to this world to eat. So they can be sleeping, they can be bringing out waste, and their mouth is still in the food eating. So if you allow them to roam about, they litter the compound. So it affects their health, because something about them, they can just pick anything and be eaten. So if you allow them just roll about, another of the bird may come and just pick on their weight, on that one's waist that is not feeling fine. So that's how they pass.
So the feeding is actually difficult to control if they're roaming around eating anything that is around.
So you cannot control what they eat. So that's the issue. So it's better if you want them to roam about, so you just put a covering in a particular spot so they don't leave that spot.
To add to what he has said about keeping them, it will be okay. You won't like the situation when you have a visitor and it sees everywhere littered with their shit. So it will be okay. So, and also, if you now say you want to leave them to roaming about everywhere, that now if they are eating, when they eat, you turn the food is for growth, for maintenance, and then for reproduction. So now, if the freedom is too wide, like the space is too wide, so they will waste the energy, most of the food in generating energy. It will not add to their muscles. So it will not help them to build fast muscle. So there should be a little bit freedom to grow, not like too wide. Because if it's too wide, they will not grow fast the way you want them to. Because most of the energy will be used in generating energy when they're walking about, playing around. They will waste the energy there. So instead of using it to build muscle, so they grow fast. So
you have called it waste energy. They have called it using the energy.
Yeah, in this business, you have to be sure of you are managing all your feed.
Yeah.
So that you not spend more.
Yeah. That's interesting. So we've now talked about the kind of accommodation you're building for them. But what about my question about we're assuming families that are growing just for family use will probably not do more than 50 perhaps. So and you're saying your recommended structure that they should construct any particular size? You mentioned the one that should be for commercial farmers, but we will need to look and see samples.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to the housing building of cage, having been said in the first episode, like perhaps a family that wants to venture into 5 beds or 10 beds. So I would rather consider that they just go to their carpenter or whatsoever, they can build a wooden cage for them. That would be much more lesser because we are trying to see how family can be comfortable, not even spending much expenses when it comes to this. So you can just ask the carpenter, can he help you to build or construct a cage for fowl? So they have the idea and the knowledge of how to do the construction.
Many carpenters have the knowledge.
Yes, they do. So and then you can just give them description that I want 4x4 in terms of feet. So like and that would be by the height. So when it comes about the width of the cage, so here we are talking about 5 beds, 10 beds now, and we are talking about the size of the cage that needed to be built. So they can just help you to build the height of the cage can be 4x4 or 4x6. So it will then be a 2 tiers, or what I mean by 2 tiers, like up and down, like 2-story of
some
beds.
birds will stay on top,
some birds will stay on top, while some will come at the bottom. Because why you are doing that? Because the more they grow, the wider they become. So you might need to sort them. They will need spacing. You first put those ones on the first tiers, and after it's considered that place could not accommodate them again, so you divide them into 2, while some are at the top, some at on the ground level, the second tiers. So you have to, so the carpenter know and it's very affordable for the family to do that. Like they said also, they can rear it inside a room that is very ventilated, that is not used for anything, and if them using that, they must put a bedding materials like what we call sawdust or wood shavings.
So these materials are there to receive
the reproductive waste.
Okay.
The excretive waste, the excretions, when they defecate, so those things will accommodate that, and it's so easy for easy cleansing in cleaning of the housing.
Which was the question I was going to come to you guys and say, what do we do in terms of keeping the place clean?
So that's the essence of the bedding materials there, because it will give them easy access to clean it.
So you just come, which means periodically you have to change the sawdust. Is that it? Come and sweep it all out, and with it will go the excrement, and then you put a fresh one. How often should that be done?
Depending on the size of the number of beds you have, and then each family have to also, we can't say this is the specific time you should be doing it, because when a cage is crowded with chickens, so definitely it's required that more often, like every day you'll be cleaning. But once they have enough spacing, like 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter for one bed, I'm talking about the centimeter of each bed now to grow to maturity when it comes to broilers. So once you got 10 centimeter rather by 10 centimeter, that is spacing which a bed needs. Understand? So once you consider that, and then you yourself as a family that you take care, as a manager that you take care of your fowl, you should know that this bed material is wet, is bringing out some heat, is generating some heat, because the feces they defecate we later comes to ammonia that will even be shocking to the nose. Perhaps if you also just open their room, just say, wow, this thing is very shocking. So it means that it needs to be changed, it needs to be cleaned, it needs to be properly managed.
I remember you now taking me back to when I was little growing up, and I did say my mom grew chickens. I hated this part of it. It used to smell, and she used to insist, give it out as task, go and clean. Oh dear, it was a messy job. But don't mind me. It doesn't mean the goal is well worth it, and therefore it's a noble job if you can indeed do it, and members of the family share in the task. It probably shouldn't be one person's job. You take turns in rotating. This person does it today, the other person does. It is done. But I think the important thing is that it has to be regular so that the birds remain healthy, and there's no spread of infection and smell and the aesthetics of it.
One is properly managed. The odor will be very minimal. When you control, you keep their housing regularly, so the odor, perhaps the neighborhood behind you, they won't know that maybe somebody is hearing a poultry in a compound.
So when well done,
When
it
well
won't
done,
even smell. It would be nice and yeah, okay, great. I mean, this is very important. So we have talked about the type before embarking, the type of bird. You've chosen your number. You've embarked. You've constructed a cage where they will inhabit. We've discussed how to ensure that it is kept clean so that the birds are healthy. Stay with us. Next week we will come back and conclude this episode and discuss now what to do in terms of feeding them and what it costs, and also discuss the challenges, disease prevention, and other things you also need to do to ensure that you have the knowledge to manage your little family farm, a poultry farm. And so that is the concluding part. Very, very important. Don't miss any of it. You are about to begin to put meat on your family's table. Thank you so much. See you next week.